like to wish you I would like to wish you a very happy new year. I hope it started well, although the health situation all around the world does not seem that great, but we will see that a little bit later. Also, I'm an unexpected moderator here from Belgrade, Serbia, because our colleagues from Croatia, Marko, had some technical problems. So today, exceptionally, we will not have a participant from Croatia. Marko, I hope you will solve this problem very, very soon. So, as usual, we will start with the health assessment and try to see what's going on in our 7 countries, 6 this time. And what the health situation is all about. I will start with Serbia since I'm on the move. As everywhere, I believe, Serbia also reports a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases. We have around 13,000 new cases of COVID registered every day. Practically yesterday, it was 13,500 almost, which gives us around 1,003,000 COVID registered in total, and amount of 12,000, almost 13,000 deaths in Serbia, which is a pretty high rate. Omicron does not seem that terrible as we thought. It is extremely contagious, but hopefully the places in hospitals are not all taken just yet, and we will hope that the situation will change soon. Otherwise, the situation regarding different measures is fairly stable. We are pretty free in Serbia. You can enter Serbia without any problem if you are vaccinated. If you are not vaccinated, you can still enter Serbia with a negative PCR test. And we are still allowed to have gatherings up to 500 people indoors or outdoors. There are no health certificates required for those, except after 8 p.m. if you want to go to a restaurant. Otherwise, you can circulate completely freely. So that's the situation in Serbia. Let's see, let's say my closest neighbor so far, Budapest. Agnes, what's the situation like in Hungary?
Hello, good morning to everyone. The situation is quite similar to Hungary. Of course, we are in the beginning of the 5th wave. The number of cases is increasing every day. We had around 9,000 cases a day, actually. The daily deaths is increasing, but slightly, of course. Relatively few tests are done only in Hungary because there is no free tests. And for the government, the solution remains on vaccination and not on testing. The vaccination level is around 65% for the Hungarian population. The estimation done expect around 30 or 40,000 cases a day by the end of January. So we are at the beginning of the 5th wave, I think. New restrictions was made by the government earlier this week. The sanitary passes will become a vaccination pass. That means that by the middle of February, if you have not 3 doses, your pass will not be valid, or you have received the second one less than 6 months ago. The quarantine is 7 days right now and not 10 than before. It can be also 5 days if you have a negative PCR test. The 4th vaccination can already be received after discussion with your GP if you have already received the 3rd one more than 6 months ago. Today you can, from a European country, you can enter the Hungarian borders without any supplementary things than the vaccination pass. So it's quite easy. There is no restrictions in entering any other places in Budapest or in Hungary. So that's all for Hungary at this time.
It is a pretty good vaccination rate compared to other Southeastern and Central European countries, actually. I don't know how is the situation in Romania, Adriana. What's it up like? What's the situation like in Romania?
Hi, everybody. In Romania, the situation is also worsening. We are now at around 9,000 contaminated people per day. But it's a situation much more under control than 3 months ago, when Romania crossed a very complicated period in terms of the third wave. And this because, yes, the vaccination rate is quite low, among the lowest in Europe, I guess. It's still or barely passing 50%. But as I said, the situation is much more under control because we see less cases in the emergency system. So the lighter version of Omicron, it's more bearable in a social context. Entering Romania, it's not very complicated if the person has a green pass, COVID pass, either even from the red zones, so there is no isolation or quarantine. If a person is positive, it should enter on a 10 days quarantine if not vaccinated, or 5 days quarantine if vaccinated. So this is the main difference, because there is a difference between people that are vaccinated or not. Homologated masks are compulsory even in all public spaces, even outside. Green certificate is solicited for any social environment, as restaurants, cinemas, and other public places, but circulation or social life is not necessarily restricted for the moment, and moderate gatherings are also possible.
Okay, so it's not really better in Romania. It's pretty much the same everywhere. Slovakia, Dominika, what's it like in Slovakia?
Thank you and good afternoon from Bratislava. Actually, as of yesterday, the number of new cases is 1,800, and in the last day it's been around 2,000, 3,000, and they are decreasing, so the wave is yet to come. The vaccination rate is at almost 48%. Concerning the measures, since the beginning of January, Slovakia has been easing the restrictions. For example, the restaurants, cafes, bars, theater, cinemas are reopened for persons who are vaccinated or have recovered from COVID. But this week, the government approved a set of new measures, which will take effect from the next Wednesday. These include, for example, the new limits for the validity of vaccination, which is shortened from 12 to 9 months. And the confirmation of recovering from COVID is shortened from 6 to only 3 months. Plus, some activities and facilities will be available only for persons who have either received the booster shot, or have 2 shots and a negative COVID test, or have been fully vaccinated and recovered from COVID. This is necessary, for example, if you want to stay at a hotel or you want to attend some events. Concerning the travel regulations, entry to Slovakia is possible if you are fully vaccinated, but you must fill in a registration form before crossing the border. There is an exception and a mandatory quarantine if you visited some countries in the last 14 days, for example, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, and so on. And of course, the obligation to wear the respirator is in all facilities, public transport, and in all interiors. So that's it for Slovakia.
Thank you, Dominika. So pretty much the same, and pretty much the same thing with the number of vaccinated people. We are really bad students in Eastern Europe. Michal, how about Czech Republic? Are you better than the rest of us?
bit better. Hello to everybody. So we reached something like 33% of fully vaccinated people. 3 million persons, that's the half of this number, received the booster shot. The numbers now, so we are reaching the peak also as Hungary at the end of January. So now we have some 11,000 cases per day. That would be approximately 70,000 in France. So we are at the beginning of the peak. Traveling to Czech Republic is quite easy if you are vaccinated. So you can enter the country for any reason from any country. So we don't use anymore the colors. And there's only, if you are fully vaccinated, means with 3 doses, so the shot, the third booster shot, you just fill in the arrival form and enter to the country. If you have only 2 doses, you need a negative PCR test before arrival to Czech Republic. And if you are not vaccinated, you need a second test, so one before entering and one after entering the country, that is no older than, not earlier than 5th and no later than 7 days after arrival. Between this time, you need to wear a mask outside your accommodation. And the rules or current measures also mask everywhere inside, the access to all the services, hotels, restaurants, and so on, if you are vaccinated or you had COVID in the last 180 days. And we have one new rule, that's the shortening of the quarantine from 14 days to 5 days only. So we are waiting or we are preparing us for Omicron. And beginning from next Monday, all the companies must test their employees twice a week. And the schools, every school once a week. So those are the major rules for Czech Republic.
Okay, thank you. Going to Poland now. Lila, hello. Unmute your microphone, please.
Oh, yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sania, for this intro. So the situation in Poland has not improved much. Still, the number of hospitalization is quite high. Above 16,000 according to figures published yesterday by the health ministry. Currently, most of the infections is Delta. The wave of Omicron is expected to come within the next weeks. Despite the medical recommendations, the Polish government did not introduce higher restrictions. The shopping malls, for example, supermarkets and restaurants are open. There are some limitations with respect to public gatherings, maximum 100 per person. Discos, nightclubs are closed from December 15th. And finally, with regards to travel restriction, in case of traveling from outside the Schengen area, the negative COVID PCR test should be presented in Poland.
Okay, let's hope that we will have those numbers falling down as soon as possible. And I don't know, we will definitely keep on informing you about the news from the CE countries, but I'm really looking forward to having this health assessment out of this information point as soon as possible. Now let's move to important stuff. I mean, everything is important, but economy is definitely what interests most all of you. Let's go to Romania. Adriana, tell me, what are people thinking about economy-wise in Romania? What are the big news?
So definitely we are in a moment where there are a lot of prediction and outlooks for 2022. And those are very much influenced by the fifth wave on the one side and by reduced economic performance in the last trimester of 2021. So basically the economic growth, it's growing, but the lesser rate maybe that expected last year, and it's targeting around 5% for 2022. The inflation is today at 8.2 and mainly influenced by the energy costs, the gas and electricity invoices raised, some of them at about 50%, but the inflation is supposed to be stabilized to 5% in the second part of the year. The monetary policy, it's kept under control by the National Bank in order to control the inflation. And today the interest rate is raising. It's at 1.75 and it might go up to 3% if inflation does not stabilizes. The exchange rate, no news, so good news. The local currency is stable at about 5 RON per euro, and it's not expected to oscillate by the end of the year. The Romanian economy is still drawn by the private consumption, which was reduced mainly by the conditioning of the access in the big commercial services by the COVID certificate at the end of the last year as a measure to control the pandemic situation. So as long as these restrictions are in place or are conditioned by the green certificate and the vaccination rate does not pick up, so the private consumption will be reduced and influencing the growth of the economy. Exports and imports, the commercial balance is expected to be rather balanced this year. So I would say that the economic forecast is it's more reserved than 3 months ago, but it's still quite positive.
Okay, let's say that's good news. At least half of the good news. Michal, what about Czech Republic?
Thank you. I have, let's say, the same information. I have three points: inflation rate, the Czech crown, and the industrial recovery. So the inflation rate, the average number for last year was at 3.8%. Compared to 3.2 in 2020, so there's no big difference, but there's a quite accelerating trend in the end of the 2021, because for the December we reached the inflation rate reached 6.6 on year-to-year rate. So especially energy, fuels, lubricants, clothing, and foodwear also for 16% on year in December. So that's what we will see for sure, as the Czech National Bank is saying for the first half of this year. That's why the Czech National Bank was rising significantly the rate in 2021. Means from 0.25 in the beginning of last year, we are now up to, or the rates were raised up to 3.75 by the end of December. And the signals coming from the Czech National Bank to this year are that the rates will approach for sure 5% in the first semester of this year. That's why this high rates are attiring a lot of money on capital coming to Czech crown, and Czech crown this week reached its more than 10 years maximum to euro. That is 24.36. That means 7% appreciation from the last year. So those are the two important points. And the third one is the grew in November of Czech industry that was not so well during all the last year, especially with automotive sector that represents 25% of Czech industrial output, and all the industry represent more than 37 of the GDP of the Czech Republic, which is one of the biggest number in or ratio in European Union. So in November, finally, after 3 months of decline, the Czech industrial output increased, and that was especially due to or thanks to manufacture of machinery and equipment, one of the most important sectors, manufacture of food products, and all the sector around electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning. So we finally reached the best, or had in November, last November, the best month of the last year regarding the industrial output.
Okay, thank you. Let's hope that tendency continues all along this year. Dominika, how about Slovakia?
Well, the Slovak economy is expected to grow by 5.8% this year. And also the gross domestic product should grow by 3%. This rise should be driven mainly by the drawdown of EU structural and investment funds and the recovery and resilience plan we have. This recovery should then reduce the unemployment rate. The positive developments in the economy together with inflation rate will also raise the nominal wage growth. Even last year, the average wages rose in almost all sectors. Concerning the inflation rate in Slovakia rose to 5.6% in November, which was the highest level in last 17 years. And the annual inflation reached its highest level in 9 years, at 3.2%. It is expected that the inflation will reach its peak in the beginning of this year, and it should decline slowly in the following months. We can also see a significant increase in commodity prices, which also affects the final prices for consumers. In addition to energy, this includes food and building materials, and we expect that consumer prices will continue rising. The global supply chain disruptions from the pandemic have affected industry, of course, particularly car production. This has also slowed down the recovery, but fresh news, Slovakia remains the world leader in the number of cars produced per capita. The year-on-year result of the Slovak automotive segment experienced a growth of 4%. So we have produced more than 1 million cars. So to sum it up, our recovery and resilience plan supported by the EU will boost the economy, but the supply chain disruptions, our low vaccination rate will still continue to pose as risks. So we will see.
Wow, for the number of cars that you produced, you obviously didn't have problems with chips or the semiconductors. I hope it continues, because I've spoken recently with my friends from the automotive industry, and they say that there are no new cars, that people are wanting to buy new cars, but they are waiting for like a year to get a new car. So let's hope this trend continues. Agnes, what about Hungarian situation?
The Hungary situation is quite similar to the other countries. The statistics for the 9 first months of last year indicate rise of GDP of 7.1. The Hungarian economy with this level reached its level before crisis, 2019. But of course, like in each country, with high inflationary pressures. The Minister of Finance in a recent declaration mentioned a slight slowdown for a few weeks now. So the anticipation for the whole year of 2021 is only around 6.4 of growth. As mentioned, this good performance is realized with high inflation. We had the bad news this morning. Until now, we thought that the peak of inflation was reached in November. It's not the case because the data announced today reflect a 7.4 inflation rate in December. So it was quite bad news, as in Slovakia. We don't know where is the peak really, but the peak is for 14 years now here in Hungary. So it's the worst one since 14 years.
Wow.
To cross out or to protect the purchasing power of the Hungarian people, the Hungarian government decided to freeze the fuel prices and set a cap by the end of last year already around 1.3 euro. This week, the government decided also to fix or set a cap for 6 basic products in the Hungarian market to their level of the 15th of October. The 6 products are sugar, flour, sunflower oil, pork legs, chicken breast, and milk. And this should be effective for the 1st of February in each supermarket. The Hungarian state deficit is also quite high level already last year, and the expectation is also high for this year, around 7.5% of GDP. But just one additional information, next year will be an election year for Hungarian government. The date is fixed on the 3rd of April, and the campaign starts on the 12th of February. So in a few days, just less than 1 month.
Very interesting, because elections in Serbia on the 3rd of April as well. So it's going to be a fun period in both of our countries. Okay, going to Poland. Lila, what's the economic situation in Poland?
Yes, so we can say that the economic situation in Poland is good now. So hope it will be continue like this. So Poland's GDP growth is above 5% for last year, and the prediction for 2022 is above 4%. The unemployment rate is one of the lowest now in the European Union, also above 5%, and it is one of the lowest in history of Poland. The important market issue now is inflation, above 8% for last year, which is increasing and may possibly cause problems in 2022. So the reasons for the inflation in Poland are state aid granted to fight COVID, cost of energy, and increase of the social benefits. But however, according to predictions, the inflation rate should decrease in second half of 2022.
Okay, not bad at all. Let me tell you a little bit about Serbia. 2021 actually was a glorious year for Serbia, 7.5% growth, which makes Serbia, after Ireland, the country that had the biggest growth on the European continent. For this year, it's going to be a little bit less according to projections. We are planning on 4.5% of growth, but we'll see a little bit more about that a little bit later. The inflation, the same issue in Serbia as everywhere else, actually. According to the data of the Statistical Office of the Republic of Serbia, inflation in December compared to November amounted to 0.4%, whereas compared to December 2020, it was 7.9%. The average in annual inflation in 2021 was 4%. According to the National Bank, we will have the same level of inflation for the first trimester, and then it's expected to go down. But obviously it will depend on the prices of agricultural products, of the price of energy sources, the actual quickness of the global economic recovery, and also of the duration of the problem with the global supply chains. On the local level for Serbia, this inflation will largely depend on the outcome of the next agricultural season, which is presumed to be average, since last year it was pretty bad due to a drought that we had in Serbia. I would like to draw your attention to a sector in Serbia that was actually blooming in 2021 that we haven't spoken of before. It's the real estate. As it turns out, there was no crisis for the real estate market in Serbia. There was more construction activity than ever, actually more than in 2020. And there is an increased demand for floor area in both residential, commercial, and industrial real estate segments. The prices grew and many new projects were agreed, and a total of 1.6 billion euros was put on the real estate market in the second quarter of 2021. So this is a segment of the Serbian market that will probably attract big investments. Okay, so that's the turn and the tour of the PECO countries, of the CEE countries economically wise. Let's see, we'll have some more good news when we start talking about our hot topics. What are people talking about in Poland? Lila, can you tell us?
I have one hot news from last year regarding the hot topic regarding Poland is connected with FDI. So the foreign direct investment in Poland hit a record high last year of about 3.5 billion euro. Most of the investment was reinvestment of the profit by the companies already present in Poland. What is curious, the biggest investor was South Korea. South Korean investment in Poland includes in particular LG factories close to Wrocław. The next investors in Poland were USA and Germany. And finally, the biggest French investment in the recent years was in the telecommunication area. French company Iliad acquired Polish telecommunication company Play in 2020 and continues to invest in Poland.
Very interesting. Thank you, Lila. Going to Bucharest, Adriana, what's the hot news?
So what's the buzz? First of all, public investment. We are talking a lot about it, especially because we are closely monitoring the National Plan of Resilience. Romania had also already received almost 10% of advances on this reform plan financed by Brussels. So everybody is discussing the capacity of implementing the reforms and the projects. In terms of private investment, Orange acquired Vodafone, which was the challenger on the market last year, at the end of last year, becoming or coming in a lead position on the telecom market. And third, on a funny side, Tour de France will be crossing Bucharest this June. So Romania is on a biking map for the first time on such a big brand.
Bringing you closer to France, that's great. I hope you will cross Serbia as well. We are not that far away. Michal, what about Prague? What's the hot topic?
I will talk not about cycling, about mergers and acquisitions. We see ongoing change in the structure of the economy of Czech Republic. I was talking last time about the industry and the part of the industry that is quite important, but there's a sector that is becoming more important. Those are the software or ICT software companies, telecommunications, and e-shops. Those are becoming, or those were the biggest mergers and acquisition in last year. So the first one was the company Avast, that everybody knows, that the Czech giant antivirus company that was sold to American giant NortonLifeLock for 180 billion of Czech crowns. That means more than 7 billion euros. The second one, big acquisition, was the acquisition of Mall Group, that are e-shops, one of the biggest e-shops in Czech Republic, and we do, that is the delivery services, that both were bought by the Polish giant Allegro for 25 billion of Czech crown, 1 billion of euro. And the third big investment thing is the online grocery store Rohlík, that is the #1 in Czech Republic, that is in Germany, all over, let's say, starting all over Europe, beginning in France this year. So this is the first startup, Czech startup, that is becoming a unicorn, that with 7.5 billion Czech crowns from that had received from this year from investors. So big change in the Czech industry. And the second thing is that the Czech e-shops, we have actually in Czech Republic, we have the number of e-shops is the biggest one on comparing to number of inhabitants. More than 40,000, and they did 14% more on year-on-year turnover, and that means that the e-shop or online shopping reached almost 18% of all the turnover in this sector. That is bit more than in France. So these sectors are doing very well. Of course, COVID and quarantines helped a lot.
Okay, thank you. Before going to Slovakia and Hungary, let me give you Serbian hot news. I actually have two hot news, one a little bit longer and one shorter. We had huge protests in Serbia over the arrival of Rio Tinto company to Serbia. Actually, Jadarit, a lithium mineral, talking about chips, you know, was discovered in Serbia near the city of Loznica. And the Jadar project in Serbia is supposed to be one of the largest lithium greenfield projects in the world. The public opinion points out the disastrous environmental consequences of this project. And that was the reason that we saw the biggest demonstrations in Serbia in recent years. Actually, experts point out that mine's economic and strategic benefits would not compensate for the damage it would cause to people and nature. And also considering the low or rent economic benefit from the other project would not go to Serbia, but to Rio Tinto. Now we have the elections coming closer and closer. So the government of Serbia said that they are close to terminating everything that was agreed with Rio Tinto in 2004, because obviously they do care about public opinion. But it remains to be seen what will happen with this project, because it's probably the topic that we talk the most, except another topic that I will mention a little bit later these days. Now, it is obvious that in Serbia, public opinion is at last sensitized to environmental issues, which in a country that is regularly on the list of biggest polluters is an absolute need. That and the great crisis that Serbia's power utility EPS is undergoing these days will probably lead to an acceleration of investments in renewable energies, which are estimated at least 17 billion euros. So that's a great opportunity for all companies that are in renewables. Do come to Serbia and see what's going on, because we definitely need investments there. And another hot news, you are probably sure that it's going to be Novak Djokovic. Who else? This morning we learned that Novak Djokovic's Australian visa has been revoked for a second time. despite Monday's ruling by the judge, the immigration minister retained his power and intervened and said that Djokovic would not be allowed to stay in Australia. But this decision can be appealed, and for example, if the public opinion is against world #1 tennis player being in detention while the Australian Open is on, maybe the government will relent and let him out on a bridging visa that would allow him to play. But obviously, the political repercussions of that decision are unclear because it would contradict the message that Djokovic poses a health risk to Australian people. And obviously, I will tell you that Serbia is with Djokovic. Everybody agrees that there are many gray areas in this matter. But nonetheless, let's think a little bit about the fact that independence of justice is in question here. I don't know that such a thing could happen somewhere in Europe, that a minister, meaning a political power, overrules the decision of the judge. So now let's go to Slovakia. Dominika.
Also, yeah, I will be short this time because there are some hot news, but only few good news. But Slovakia managed to attract 29 investment projects last year, and companies will spend €500 million on them, thanks to which they will create more than 3,000 jobs. From this perspective, this is even slightly more than the year before pandemic. And the good news is also the fact that the share of value-added investments continue to grow year by year. 8 years ago, the number was at 10%, and today it's 50%. In the last year, automotive players such as Schaeffler, Hella, or the world leader in production of heat pumps, Vaillant Group, have decided to locate their research and development centers worth tens of millions of euros in our country. And we hope that this trend will continue in the years to come. So that's it for us.
Thank you, Dominika. Agnes, what about Hungary?
I have just one short hot news. Not really hot, but it's coming by the end of the year. In November, the Hungarian government signed a cooperation agreement with Thales in Cannes, in France, which is aimed to promote the cooperation and to contribute to the development of the spatial industrial sector in Hungary. Objective of the government to develop the national economy by promoting the development of high value-added sectors such as space industry, to support the research and development and cooperate with this area. The space sector is one of the industries considered an industry of future of the recovery plan of the Hungarian government. There are already some suppliers of the Thales, which are Hungarian, which want to develop new products for the company. So there is some spaces in the space for other French or foreign companies.
Wow. That's actually great news. I'm very happy to see, because the space industry is one of the last sectors that we have to develop here in the Eastern Europe. I'm rooting for the rocket from Hungary. Okay, this is absolutely perfect. We are 45 minutes exactly. So remains to say goodbye to everybody, to thank you very much for being with us today. I hope that you had some good and interesting news. Do not hesitate to reach out to your local chamber if you would like to penetrate any of these markets, and follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter, and we are absolutely everywhere. But do use the opportunity to follow the Le Booster PECO on LinkedIn page, where you will find the freshest news from our 7 countries. Marco, I hope you will recover soon. Kudos to Croatia, and see you all very soon. Thank you so much.